Hello, and welcome to the AUA Focus Series, a podcast channel by the AUA Media Lab. My name is Bruce Boghosian, president of the American University of Armenia, and my guest today is Dr. Lawrence S. Bacow, former president of Harvard University, former president of Tufts University, former chancellor and chair of the faculty at MIT, and truly one of the most distinguished academic leaders of our time. For me, if I may speak personally for a moment, this is a particularly special conversation since I arrived as a professor at Tufts University at almost exactly the same time that Dr. Bacow arrived as president. I learned a great deal about academic administration from him when I was in the Tufts Academic Leadership Program, which he started. Later, when I came to AUA as president for the first time, I attended the Seminar for New University Presidents at the Harvard Graduate School of Education, where he was one of the lecturers. So I feel that in the area of academic administration, he has been one of the mentors of my life just by watching his example and having the opportunity to speak with him over the years. So Dr. Bacow, Larry, if I may.
Please.
Welcome.
Bruce, if I may.
Welcome to Armenia.
Thank you very much.
It's very good to have you here, and by now you've spent almost a week here.
Correct.
And met members of the AUA community. Yesterday you delivered the keynote address at our 34th commencement ceremony, and before we get into the questions, I'd just like to ask you to share with our listeners, and I always like to ask this to people who visit Armenia toward the end of their stay here. What are your impressions of Armenia? What surprised you most about the country? What surprised you most about the university, the students, the faculty, the atmosphere? Give me your impressions.
Well, first, thank you very much for having me. It's wonderful to be on the podcast with you, but also grateful for the invitation to come to visit the university and participate in the commencement ceremonies. The first impression are the people. The people of Armenia, literally everybody that we have met, literally, and we've now traveled around the country to see many of the sites. Everybody has been incredibly welcoming and gracious and friendly. So I think that's the first impression. The second impression is the vibrancy of Yerevan as a city. We've spent our time in the evenings just walking the streets, and it's a city that just hums with activity. Lots of young people, people engaging in conversations in cafes. And so that's the second impression. The third impression is of the university itself. It's hard to believe that this institution is only 35 years old when you see all that's going on here, the campus that has been built, that continues to be built. Thank you for the opportunity to participate in the dedication of your new park adjacent to the campus. But the students, the faculty, the staff, there's an enormous sense of both pride, but also ownership in the institution, a real feeling that this is ours. And I think not just for the university, but the country, given that it's still a relatively young democracy.
Mm-hmm. Thank you very much for sharing that. It's good to hear that. I have the same impressions. I feel the same way about Yerevan in particular and the vibrancy of the city.
It's a beautiful city,
yeah.
and the countryside is just stunning. And of course, the history and the sites that we've seen are amazing.
Good. I'm glad you're enjoying it.
Very much so.
We've prepared some questions for today's
Sure.
conversation, and let me start with sort of taking off from your commencement address yesterday. What message that you gave the students during your commencement address is the one that you hope stays with them if they're looking back 5 or 10 years from now? What is it you hope they remember about that address?
Well, I tried to do two things in my commencement address. The first is what I would say most commencement speakers try to do, and that's give sort of advice for the moment. how to think about their careers, how to relax a little bit at a time in which they're anxious about life after university. But it was the second part of my address that I hope actually stays with them, because I think that my message was that ultimately in life, character matters as much as anything else, especially in these challenging times. And so I invoked actually the teachings of a 2nd century Talmudic sage named Ben Zoma, who asked 4 very important questions. Who is wise? And his answer, he who learns from all people. So I wanted students to think that this is not the end of their education, but the commencement of the rest of it. Who is wealthy? He who rejoices in his portion. I wanted students to understand that there's nothing wrong with ambition, but ambition for ambition's sake can be corrosive. That if they just keep wanting more of whatever it is they want, they're never going to be happy. And they have to understand that they need to recognize when they're actually blessed with what they have. Ben Zoma asked, who is powerful? And his answer, he who exercises self-control. And in these times, I think that's an incredibly important lesson as we see leaders who who are incapable of actually containing themselves, and the rest of the world often suffers. And then his last question was, who is honored? Those who honor others. And I wanted them to recognize the importance of recognizing the dignity of every human being, of showing up when it matters, of being a good friend, being supportive of others. So it's the latter part, those 4 questions, lessons that I hope stay with students.
Those were beautiful lessons, and the whole commencement address and the way you tied it together was wonderful.
Thank you.
I think we'll keep it on our webpage going forward, and so people will be able to refer to that here as well. We were both at Tufts together, and during that time, I could see how universities shape not just careers, but civic life. And I know that a large part of your professional background is in public policy. How do you think that's evolved over the years? Do you think universities are doing enough now to prepare students to be good citizens, not just professionals, but citizens and engaging in civic life? If not, what more needs to be done?
It's a great question. I think there's always more to be done. Let me just say that at the beginning. I think one of the functions of higher education traditionally has been to educate citizens for a democracy. And certainly that's tremendously important in any democratic society, but I would argue especially so in a young democracy such as Armenia. I think universities do many, many things, and society often asks us to do different things at different times. I think we not only educate our students to go forward and hopefully make a difference in the world, and part of what I think it's our obligation to impart to our students, and I think you did this quite nicely in your remarks yesterday at commencement, is the importance of giving back and giving back to society, because everyone who has the privilege of getting a university education owes a debt of gratitude to the society that helped to create these institutions of higher learning. But it's also the case that we influence the world through the scholarship of our faculty and the knowledge that we generate. And that's historically been true. Tufts graduate, actually, who went on to have a very, very distinguished career as a public servant, Daniel Patrick Moynihan, famously said that if you want to build a great city, first build a great university and wait 100 years. And it is the case that the ideas, the scholarship, the research, the technologies that come out of research universities create economic opportunity for the world, but also just improve people's lives. If you look at the drugs that we take, the therapies that we find ourselves taking, saving our lives, almost all of them have their roots in discoveries made in research universities. I could go on, But yes, I think that we have a special role to play in educating students for a democratic society. We have a special role to play in helping the people who live near these institutions flourish and thrive, even if they do not attend them.
Yes, yeah, no, that's a very good point.
And I think actually AUA demonstrated that incredibly well with the dedication of this wonderful new park, which will be at least as much of an amenity for the neighbors of the university as it will for the students and the faculty and the staff. And I think it was a real gift to Yerevan and to the neighborhood.
Yeah, the park was designed with that in mind. It will make it easier for people from the neighborhood above the university to get down to Boghosian Avenue below.
One of the interesting things I think about how higher education has changed is, the traditional view that universities were ivory towers, which erected walls, in effect, to keep people out, has given way to a very different view at this point. And now, again, the park is a great example how we invite people in. And I think also technology has invited people into the university. People literally from around the world have the opportunity to participate, if you will, in the conversation that we're having now. One only has to go back several decades, and that was impossible.
Yes, yeah. So technology helps make
Absolutely
this possible.
makes the university more transparent and makes our boundaries permeable.
Yes,
in ways that I think are profoundly healthy.
This is off topic a little bit, but a few years ago, I had the opportunity to visit the American University of Cairo, and it had completed a move. It had originally been in Tahrir Square, which is in the middle of Cairo, and they moved to the area called New Cairo, which at that time literally was a desert. So you have a university in the middle of the desert. The boundary of Cairo ended, and in this area they wanted to build up. I think they followed Daniel Patrick Moynihan's advice, and they put the university there first. And the city just grew up around it.
Of course.
It was growing up from the original perimeter, and then it grew around that. Then it connected restaurants, hotels, all these things followed. And so it's a very good point. And of course, we hope AUA can play a lot of that role here. You've spent a lot of your career advocating the expansion of access to higher education, I think for many of the reasons that we've already discussed. In a time when many people are questioning the value and the cost of university, how do you think universities should respond?
Well, I continue to believe in the value of higher education. I wouldn't do what I do if I didn't. But I think when we educate a student, we not only change that student's life, but we tend to change the lives of their children and their children's children and beyond. In some ways, I think I'm an example of that. Both of my parents came to the United States as refugees. My father before World War II, my mother afterwards. My mother was an orphan. She had lost her entire family in the war. We're Jewish. She was a survivor of Auschwitz, the only member of her family, the only Jew from her town who survived the war. When I was appointed president of Harvard, I said, where else in the world can you go literally in one generation off the boat with nothing? Both my mother arrived as an orphan with a suitcase. She came on the second Liberty ship that brought refugees from Europe after World War II. Liberty ships were troop ships that were modified to bring refugees. And where else in the world could you go in one generation from that to become the president of one of the world's great universities? It's higher education that made that possible. Because my father was able to get a college education. He worked hard and went to college at night. But because he got an education, my sister and I had the opportunity to go to great universities and got, candidly, an even better education. Our children have had a very different life as a result of the fact that my father got an education and now we've had it. And their children will have very different lives as well. So I think investments in giving people opportunity by helping them prepare for life, for careers, to play a significant role in the world is one of the best investments anyone can make. And I believe you said yesterday to your graduates that it's one of the few investments one can make that nobody can ever take away from you. Governments can tax away or seize one's belongings. I don't have to tell people in Armenia about what that's like. If you take a look at what happened recently in Artsakh, but nobody can ever take away your education.
Mm-hmm.
So I passionately believe in the transformative power of higher education.
Higher education, yeah, I do as well, and that's, as you said, that's why we're in this profession. It's not only an investment in the student and their family and their descendants, but when the students give back, it's an investment in society as a whole.
Absolutely.
It's something that a society can do, a government can do, that pays back to that society over years.
If I can just comment a little bit on that, there's been much criticism in the United States of institutions of higher education, and our government has been, our president has been exceptionally critical of Harvard. And I've found it necessary at times to point out that Harvard has not only contributed to the United States, but literally helped to bring the nation into being. We were founded in 1636. On the day the Declaration of Independence was signed, Harvard was 140 years old. There were 9 signers of the Declaration of Independence who were Harvard alumni. There were 5 framers of the Constitution who were Harvard alumni. George Washington quartered his troops in Massachusetts Hall, where the president's office sits at Harvard. He commandeered, the buildings on campus to quarter his troops during the Revolutionary War, during the Battle of Boston. The president's house at Harvard, he also commandeered and turned into a military hospital to treat the wounded in the Battle of Bunker Hill and Breeds Hill during the Revolutionary War. So, institutions like ours, and, I made a point of commenting in my remarks yesterday that this institution was founded at the same time that the Independent Republic of Armenia was founded. And I don't think that's an accident. So the institution continues to contribute and shape the kind of country Armenia is and the kind of democracy it is. And so I think institutions like ours are very important.
Let me go back for a moment to the critical importance of full need and need-blind admissions policies. That, in fact, I know you worked on quite a bit at Tufts, and we have them here at AUA, and that policy and calling them by those names to emphasize their importance is, in fact, something I picked up from you. During the years that we pursued these policies at Tufts, I remember noticing that the student demographic diversified tangibly. When you look at AUA's full need and need blind policy as we have it today, I think you can take some pride in the fact that it's a reflection of your own influence here. So,
well, thank you very much for sharing that. Talent tends to be flatly distributed, but opportunity is not. You will find smart, brilliant young people everywhere in the world and everywhere in our society. But not everyone gets the opportunity to put their talent to work. And I think a policy of admitting students without regard for their ability to pay for their education, and then ensuring that if they get admitted, they can afford to attend, the first being need blind and the second meeting full need, is one of the greatest gifts a university can give, not just to its students, but to society. So I commend you and your colleagues for making that happen here at AUA.
So it seems to me that this is particularly important in a country like Armenia, which is rapidly developing. It's a young country. It's only 35 years old. But the development in the country is unevenly distributed. The way that Yerevan is developed and the way that more remote areas of the country and small towns and villages are developed are two very different things. And I think maybe you've seen some of this in your excursion outside of Yerevan. You'll perhaps see more when you go into Tavus later today. In that situation, it is particularly important because, the next Albert Einstein is the example that everybody gives, could be in a village somewhere in Tavus or in southern Armenia, and you wouldn't know if you don't give them the opportunity based on their merit to study at a place like that. Artificial intelligence is transforming almost every field of study at an incredible pace, it seems. It's changing the entire roots of epistemology, how we acquire knowledge. And some people say that it threatens even the scientific method that we're taught in. I think I learned the scientific method when I was in high school, and it was really drummed into me during my first year of university. As somebody who has led two major research universities, how do you think higher education and the academic endeavor should adapt to artificial intelligence? Is there a way that we can adapt without losing the human side of learning, without losing the scientific method? Really, is all there is to learning feeding corpuses of knowledge to an artificial intelligence and then simply asking it questions afterwards? That doesn't sound like the modern scientific method. It sounds like Francis Bacon's version from back in the 1600s.
Well, I left my crystal ball at home when I packed for this trip. So I hesitate to make any predictions. I'm not smart enough to say where the evolution of AI is going to lead us. There are lots of people who are making predictions right now. The only prediction I'll make is that most of them will be wrong, especially because the technology is developing daily. So it's difficult to understand exactly where it will go. I do think, though, that if you take a look at the history of science and the history of technology, every great scientific revolution, but more importantly, every great technological revolution that has produced increases in productivity has also been accompanied by skepticism, fear, real economic dislocation. And I think it's reasonable for people to be concerned about where this might lead us. That said, I also think it underscores, as I think your question anticipates, even more important for us to give thought to what it is that makes us uniquely human. What is it that we can do, that the human brain can do, that AI is likely never to be able to do? Here, at a time in which people have questioned the value of the humanities and investing in the humanities at the expense of investments, let's say, in science or technology, I hope there will be a renaissance, I think an appropriate word, of interest in the humanities, because we will have to ask, what is it that we can uniquely contribute to the world as humans that machines will never be able to do? I don't have the answer to that, but I think it's important to ask the question.
There are some people who question if there's anything that the machines won't be able to do. People point out that no species on Earth has ever created a new species that is more intelligent than they are. That's never happened except through the natural evolutionary process.
But in your observation, there's an embedded assumption, and that is about the definition of intelligence. Okay, and I would question that and ask, there's been much work in the last half century on the concept of multiple intelligences.
Yes.
And so the question is whether or not machines will be able to master all the multiple intelligences that humans are capable of exhibiting. It's difficult to imagine a machine being able to replicate certain emotions which are essential to human existence, whether or not we're talking about love or empathy. We talk about EQ as well as IQ,
Yes.
and one can mimic EQ, and in fact, some of the current forms of AI do that. But in fact, I recall when we were both students at MIT in the early days, Marvin Minsky's earliest attempt at AI was a computer program that one could converse on a terminal. Do you remember that? Did you ever play with that when you were at MIT? It had a name for it. No, I can't recall. But you would sit down and it would say good morning, and you would type something back and said good morning, and then it would engage in conversation with you. And of course, this was his attempt to respond to the Turing test
Yeah.
at the time. It was called Doctor, actually.
Doctor, that's what
Doctor.
I
It was a
going to
psychiatrist.
suggest,
Yes. And
I have seen Doctor way back.
yeah, this was in the 70s.
Yeah.
And interestingly, the current attempts to actually apply AI in this way have had disastrous results. In fact, leading some people to do harm to themselves by misinterpreting or interpreting what a machine has told them. So AI will get better, but I don't think my prediction is that there'll be some things that prove to be difficult to replicate.
I remember people at the time of the Doctor program actually suggesting that maybe this could substitute in for a real doctor, and there was immediate revulsion at this idea that there's no way that. But now in this, where are we, the third or the fourth AI revolution at this point?
Yeah.
Now people are seriously suggesting that AI can play a role in patient diagnosis.
And there are things that it can do better than humans can. There's no question about that. Machines have often been able to do it. The question is whether or not there will be a machine that can do everything better than a human can. And of course, there I have my doubts.
Yeah, I mean, part of this physical intelligence, for example, an athlete that is sort of exquisitely trained to run or to do some other sport. And when you bring this up, then they say, well, when AI is mixed with robotics, we'll be able to do that. But the counter-argument to this is what happened with chess. There are AI programs that can play chess better than any human, but that hasn't stopped humans from playing chess.
Right. Another analogy I might use is that if you take a look at the development of the phonograph, and of course it brought music to people who couldn't hear it live. And then when we started getting, CDs and perfect, replicas of the music that one would hear, there were predictions at the time that, people would stop going to concerts. In fact, the opposite happened. Now people wanted to hear it live. There were predictions that broadcasting baseball games on TV would bring an end to people sitting in the stands. In fact, it created an even bigger market for people going and watching it in person. There were similar predictions that changes in educational technology, MOOCs, would bring an end, to in-person learning. Yet people still want to sit across from another human being and learn from them and listen from them.
Yes.
So
Those are all really good examples, I think.
yeah, why would you pay several $100s to go to the opera when you can watch a perfect digital recording or get a digital download, off the web for nothing or pennies, not have to pay for parking, not have somebody sitting next to you coughing in their seat. Yet people still want to go to symphony, they want to go to concerts. Why do millions of people want to go to Taylor Swift concerts, But they do. And so I think there's something about interacting face to face with humans, experiencing things live in real time that is special. That will not go away.
That won't go away. A follow-up question on this, and this question is almost a cliche at this point, but it's nonetheless important, especially for graduates and newly graduating students. It's been said, and I think it's true, there's a lot of anxiety among these students right now about AI replacing jobs and changing career paths overnight. And so students are interested in knowing what skills are sort of not likely to be replaced by AI anytime soon. What skills or qualities do you think will become even more valuable in this age of AI? Can you give advice to today's students about this?
I think the soft skills, of learning how to work with other people, how to be part of a team, how to lead a team, how to inspire others, how to give people hope in times where there's anxiety, how to find the resources to accomplish things where everybody else sees scarcity, how to bring people together where others only see differences. These are skills that are not likely to be replicated by a machine. The human qualities that contribute to leadership, that contribute to getting people to recognize opportunity where others only see challenges. Those are going to be durable and always in demand. Now, they're going to have to be married with other types of skills as well. And again, I'm not smart enough to be able to sort of say, well, these are the particular skills that you need to master today that will serve you well 20, 30, 40 years from now. But I think college education, university education has always been about teaching students how to learn because, as I tried to suggest yesterday, that the wise person, as Ben Zoma teaches, learns from all people. And while yesterday may have been the end of your students' AUA education, it was the commencement of the rest of their education. We never stop learning.
Yeah, it's more critically important than ever that universities adopt that philosophy of teaching students how to think, how to reason, how to assimilate new ideas and technologies and work with them as they come along.
Yeah, and I think that, again, many universities will use technology to continue to engage their alumni in lifelong learning. I always used to say, the cost of a college education looks much more reasonable if you amortize it over a lifetime as opposed to 4 years.
Yeah.
So it should be 4 years and for life with continuous learning and engagement over time.
Yeah, because it will change your life, the rest of your life. It'll change the way you think. It'll change. I knew a professor once, in fact, a Harvard professor, who would say to his students at the beginning it was in the chemistry department, he said, "I'm going to change your brain. When you walk out of this course," and the students sort of cringed a little bit in their seats, "when you walk out of this course, in the same way that when you go to the gym and work out and changes your muscles, I'm going to change your brain." I think it made students think about the educational process in a different way.
I remember my first year at MIT, and we both went to the same institution, I think 4 or 5 years apart. And I remember taking a course called 100, which was an introduction to computer programming, and which most of us took. We all learned Fortran. We learned to program on an IBM 1130, which occupied a huge room, elevated floor.
I remember the room.
You remember the room. That computer probably in 1969, when I took that course, cost millions of dollars, and today has a fraction of the computational capability I have in my watch. And I mean, who could have anticipated that, at the time? So
even, the various technologies that have been made possible over the years by the advance in computer power, computational power, it seems like ages ago, but social media really only became possible around 2005.
Right.
People who were trained in computer science, who developed it, didn't know what social media were. They didn't know that their careers were going to lead them to positions in companies like Facebook or LinkedIn or others, because nobody could conceive of this 5 years earlier than that. So
I always have to remind myself that the iPhone debuted during my 6th year as president of Tufts in 2007. That's still very recent history.
It's still very recent, isn't it? Yeah. Let's turn to world politics. We live in a very difficult world these days. Sometimes it feels like there's a World War III that's ongoing right now, just in slow motion. Last Friday, we hosted a political science conference premised on the idea that the so-called great game of superpower competition, as it was played in the 19th century, is now returning. This is not a welcome cycle of history to be returning to us. In the meantime, we have serious environmental crises. We have skyrocketing levels of inequality that have never been seen before. Genocide broadcast live on television that the world seems powerless to stop. Pandemics, both recent and ongoing. When young people look around and feel overwhelmed by this horrific state of the world, what do you think they should lean on as a source of hope and motivation for the future, for their future?
Well, it's easy to get discouraged, and certainly we face many challenges, and I worry about the world that we're leaving to our children, our grandchildren, as the case may be. If you pull back, though, maybe not to 20,000 feet, 40,000 feet, 100,000 feet, and look over the sweep of time, actually, there's some good news. Steven Pinker has written an important book about this, where the number of people who've been killed in war, for example, is declining. The number of people who've succumbed to disease is declining. The number of people who live in poverty has declined enormously over time. The number of people who do not have access to clean water has declined. The number of people who live without electricity in the world has declined. So, yes, we face enormous challenges going forward. Some of these challenges are a consequence of the fact that we've been successful in other realms. So people are living longer now. Now we have the luxury, I guess you would say, of worrying about neurodegenerative diseases, which didn't exist in the past because nobody lived past the age of 50, if you go back to the Middle Ages. And we have the capacity, if we don't destroy it by our disinvestment in science, to be able to model, if we continue on the same track, what the consequences are going to be, not 5 years now, 10 years from now, but maybe 100 years from now, which, of course, it's scary and should cause us to think differently about how we approach different issues. So, I guess fundamentally I'm an optimist, and I believe in the capacity of individuals and institutions to adapt. And I believe that we will adapt again in the future. That doesn't mean that we will not face enormous challenges in the interim. And, any war that results in the loss of life is tragic, and especially so if it results in the loss of life of people that you know and love. And I don't have to say that to anybody in Armenia because you've experienced far too much of it and far too recently. So you know it, you know it well. All the more reason I think that we need to, from time to time, pause and really think hard about how we collectively respond as a society. Rare is the pendulum that only swings once and stops, right? And if you take a broad view of history of the world, we see certain themes coming and going over time. Right now, I think throughout the world, democracy is under stress. We see a rise of what some might see as fascism in different parts of the world. We've seen it in the past. We'll probably see it in the future. It's my hope, again, the optimist in me believes that the pendulum will swing back.
You've spent your career in institutions devoted to knowledge and truth. Harvard has Veritas as, is it a motto? Or
yes.
Yeah, motto. In an era of misinformation and polarization, what responsibility do universities have in helping to rebuild the public trust?
It's a very good question. I think we have to keep doing what we've traditionally done, and that is to create space where ideas can be contested, where, truth needs to be tested on the anvil of ideas. Okay, it's not as if truth is revealed and everybody nods their head and says yes. I mean, in many ways, truth is a journey. It's not a destination. Now, there's certain truths we would like to believe that are now accepted, that the world is round, for example, that gravity exists, that there are laws of nature that are fundamentally laws of nature. But even those over time have been revealed to have been, once we understand things at the quantum level, the laws of nature look very different. So even there, I think an insatiable curiosity that drives inquiry over time, that's at the core of what we do in universities. Our students ask us questions sometimes that we can't answer in a classroom. And many times those questions that we can't answer become the basis for a new investigation. Mm-hmm. And I think that's sort of the role of universities, to be able to always ask hard questions, to always ask important questions, to always bring to bear the capacity of the human mind to explore, to tinker, to create, to search for truth. And in the end, that is a fundamental reason for our existence as institutions, to create knowledge, to do so for knowledge's sake, but also with the belief, the core belief, that knowledge ultimately betters the human condition.
And it's often when existing truths or theories break down, they break down often at their foundations.
Correct.
And that's another good reason that it's important to keep challenging these things. Part of the scientific method of the 20th century is that theories must always be challenged.
Absolutely.
And it's only when if they pass those tests, then it helps you believe in that theory more. And when they don't pass those tests, you've got to look for a different theory.
Exactly. And one of my MIT colleagues, Thomas Kuhn, actually wrote brilliantly about this in his book, The Structure of Scientific Revolution, and how we make change over time.
When I was a freshman at MIT, I was made to read that book in a philosophy course.
Yeah, ironically, Tom's daughter, Sarah, was a doctoral student of mine at MIT. So
it is a wonderful book.
Yeah,
it changed, everything about the way that I thought about science.
I think every academic should be required to read that book.
Yeah, that was, in the question that I asked earlier about artificial intelligence. I don't want to go back to that necessarily, but really, when you think about large language models as people are looking into them now, you feed it lots of information and you set weights in neural networks, and then you ask it a question that wasn't in that corpus of information that you fed it. And often it's able to synthesize an answer to it. Sometimes it gets it wrong. Sometimes it has these hallucinations. But more often than not, it extrapolates, it synthesizes, it gets things right. But is that consistent with the scientific revolution? It seems like the most naive kind.
Right. It operates incrementally. Einstein said famously that he did his best work unburdened by the thoughts of others. Right? And as we know, in fields like mathematics and physics, often the very best work is done by very, very young scholars who bring a fresh approach, unburdened, by the thoughts of others.
Yeah, I think they don't even give Fields medals, which are the highest prize in mathematics, to people over 40 years old. So.
Well, and there's the equivalent in economics, the John Bates Clark Medal, which is awarded, to the best American economist under the age of 40. And it's only awarded once a year to one person. Used to only be awarded once every other year. And a great predictor of the Nobel Prize in economics, which of course can be awarded to 3 people simultaneously.
I see. Well, yeah, the reason mathematics does this is they don't have a Nobel Prize.
Correct. Right.
Interesting. It's interesting that 40 is the cutoff age for both of them.
Yeah. Which means that some of us are 35 years past our prime.
Let's see. You've mentored generations of students and younger university leaders. What advice do you find yourself giving most often to people stepping into leadership roles in the universities, in higher education, for the first time?
Easy. Always do the right thing. It's usually not that difficult to figure out. It's often excruciatingly difficult to do.
I think anybody who's been in an academic leadership position knows exactly what you mean by that.
And I don't think it's unique to academic leadership. I think it's true probably for all sorts of leadership.
The same questions surely come up in industry and
government. Yeah.
Tufts University, where we've overlapped, is a place that values active citizenship and global engagement. Do you think international education and cross-cultural exchange are emphasized more now and matter more than they did when we first entered academia?
Yes, I do. I think the world has shrunk in part due to technological advances. I mean, it's now easy to have a conversation with somebody in real time on the other side of the earth. It's easy for people to access information in ways that wasn't before. So, I remember actually when I was president of Tufts, we had a couple of faculty members who were jointly teaching courses with counterparts in Africa in real time. And they would have students in Africa with a faculty member in Africa, working collectively with students at Tufts, a faculty member based at Tufts, and the students would collaborate on projects. That was not possible when we were students, but it's easy to do today, and even easier now than it was 25 years ago when we both started at Tufts. The fact that I can pull out my iPhone and literally at zero marginal cost have a video conference with anybody anywhere in the world speaks to the fact that we've lowered the barriers to cross-cultural communication. I think that's important because in the end, we learn from our differences. And there are opportunities to learn when we assemble people with very different perspectives, life experiences, and challenges, and bring them together to address certain problems.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that it's becoming more and more true. As you say, I like the metaphor, the world has shrunk in this regard. Technology maybe has made that possible, even more so now than it was when we were both at Tufts. AUA has a program going with the University of Southern California. It's called iPodia, developed at the University of Southern California, and we have been participants in it with them, wherein you see a virtual auditorium. The students see themselves sitting in the auditorium. From their perspective, they can turn to the left and right and see other students. But those students might be in a different country somewhere else.
Correct.
And we've done it, in fact, with students from Armenia, students from USC, and we mixed in women students from Afghanistan who don't have the opportunity to attend college, university there, but from their home on a computer are able to mix in with the class. Lots of things become possible.
During my time on the Harvard Corporation, before I became president of MIT, we created edX in collaboration with MIT, and as you know, made courseware available, to the world from not just Harvard and MIT, but other countries, other institutions. One interesting story: the most popular class at Harvard these days are two: the introductory economics class and the introductory computer science class. And the introductory computer science class was one of the first classes to go up on edX to the world. There was a 14-year-old boy in Nepal, in a village, mountain village in Nepal, which somehow had internet access. And he not only took CS50, the introductory computer science course, he aced it. And he came to Harvard as an undergraduate as a result of that.
As a result of edX.
So it's an example of a couple of themes that we've talked about in this most interesting conversation about the impact of technology, how it's shrunk the world, how it's made the borders and boundaries of the university far more permeable, opened it up to the rest of the world, but also the importance of need-blind admission and making it possible. Talent is broadly distributed, but opportunity is not. And how, if you combine those two, it brings, a 14-year-old genius from Nepal to a place like Harvard.
On a more personal note, you've indicated to me that you've probably attended 60 commencement ceremonies.
I think yesterday was my 60th.
We were the 60th. Great. After all those commencement ceremonies and all the campuses and the crises and the commencements and the board meetings that you've participated in over the years, what still gives you the most joy about university life?
Seeing those young people cross the stage, when you shake their hands, when their picture is taken, and then looking up and seeing their proud families. I mean, in the end, that's what it's all about.
That's what it's all about. Absolutely. Let me close by asking you, after this visit to Armenia, when you go back to the U.S. and you talk to your friends about the visit that you just had to Armenia, to AUA, what's the first thing you're going to tell them?
Well, it's what I've been telling everybody on by text and email. Got to come to Armenia. So I think my next job is with the Armenian Chamber of Commerce.
Yeah,
Board of Tourism.
It's a very good place to visit, and
it's a
and
lovely
maybe
place to visit.
Underappreciated by tourists throughout the world. Larry, thank you so much for being here in Armenia, for making the trip to give our commencement address, for inspiring our graduates at the commencement ceremony. It was a beautiful address. I've heard wonderful feedback about it already, and so generously giving us your time. We're truly grateful.
Well, the honor is mine, and I'm grateful for the invitation that you extended to me. And it's been a wonderful experience. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us on the AUA Focus.